I'm Forrest.
And I'm Celine.
Reference librarians at the Auburn Avenue Research Library, a special research library, a part of Fulton County Library System.
In celebration of Black history and excellence, we are joined by J.P. Miller in conversation about her book titled Henry Louis Gates Jr., a part of her Leaders Like Us series. Today's discussion will explore the history and development of the book, followed by a brief reading by the author.
In Leaders Like Us collection, you'll learn about some important African-American leaders, including Henry Louis Gates Jr., Major Taylor, Shirley Chisholm, Rosetta Tharpe, and Rebecca Lee Crump.
Growing up in Asheville, North Carolina, and a preacher's kid, J.P. Miller's weekdays were filled with school, sports, and the weekend with church. From reading literature like Huckleberry Finn to pursuing her degree at Tennessee State University in 1982. Her drive truly guided her path and headed off into the wild blue yonder as an airman in the United States Air Force.
In 2015, Miller retired from the United States Forest Service with over 30 years federal service. And since then, she has dedicated much of her time to writing beautiful children's literature. And with no further interruption, J.P. Miller.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, just fine.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
It's wonderful to have you. Thank you for joining our virtual story time.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes, it's been a pleasure.
Ms. Miller, Henry Louis Gates learned through his research that his family is descended in part from the Yoruba people. Has he ever traveled to Nigeria to learn more about the culture of the Yoruba?
Yeah, he's actually been in Africa several times, not only for his own personal family, but to help other families to tie into their African roots. So he's very well traveled, very well versed, and of course we know that he loves to research and dig and learn as much as he can about his family roots, as well as help the African-American community as well learn about our roots.
Wow. You know, this book, your title primarily references his work that he did on his paternal ancestry. Is there anything you're able to share with us about his maternal ancestry or genealogical research?
Well, I really didn't get too much into that because, writing for children, you try to have it, kind of like a mystery. And so on his paternal side, there was this huge mystery in terms of who his great-great-grandfather was. And so I just kind of focused on that, and kind of carried that throughout the theme of the story. So I really didn't dive into his maternal side that much.
Okay. Now, Henry Louis Gates was an Ivy Leaguer. Did Gates face any race-related challenges while he was a student at Yale?
If it was, he didn't really talk about it that much. He didn't let it keep him down. Of course, we know anybody that's really followed him. We know that recently, what was that, maybe 10 years ago or so, that he was, a policeman came to his home and arrested him when they thought he was breaking in to his own home. So that within itself will show you that there was probably some prejudices and racism that was going on and things that he had to overcome. But I think that he was a real trooper, or he is a real trooper. He just carries on. As a lot of the people that I've researched that have been following their destiny, they will say that yes, they did come across racism and sexism and things of that nature, but those are the things that they did not, they just kind of brushed it off and went on and did what they had to do. So I believe that's the case with Dr. Gates as well.
Beautiful.
Yes.
In the book, you also shared that Gates was asked to teach classes while he was a student in college, reflecting his mastery of specific skills that truly shape any professional, not only as a lawyer, as an educator. Was he also charged with many responsibilities of providing guidance or mentorship throughout his own pursuit of his education?
Yeah, I think just for the simple fact of, genealogy, particularly in the African American community, was something that we didn't really dive into. A lot of it was the Bible, the family Bible that you would see on grandma's, coffee table that had a lot of our records in it. And so I think it was something new to everyone, and to have someone that was such an analytical thinker as Dr. Henry Louis Gates, even be a part of that. Of course, I'm sure they tried to get as much out of him and to help other students. Him mentoring other people, being mentored to reach the goal that he has reached in terms of. He is world renowned with his genealogy, and I'm one. I'm like, he's one of my top fans. I follow him all the time.
Okay. Well, besides genealogy, what other interests did Gates have while growing up?
He was just a curious child, and I really like just focused on that. Just think of a child that, when he learns this much information about his family, it was just a little piece, and he decided to dive into that even more. And so he went out and bought his spiral, and he started interviewing his family because he wanted to know more about that. And then, he also talked about in the fifth grade, he had a ancient history class. And so he really loved that class. And that's kind of the things that molded him. He had uh, he was a historian in his DNA, from the very start, And so I just like that fact about him and his curiosity and how it led to him being the person that he is today.
Oh, wow. His curiosity truly has been the motivation for preserving history, which is so important,
Absolutely.
well as circulating it. In your title, there are no mentions of his family or marriage in the book, although he was married with two children. How important is the family unit to Gates, as well as how did it also support him throughout his career?
Well, yeah, and like I've said, when you're trying to narrow a picture book down to 600 words, there are a lot of things that you have to, to leave off about a person. But yes, he was married, and he does have two children, and from that you could tell that family is very important to him, and the fact of his research over the years to try to tie people back, to our roots, even, to as much as he came up with DNA, when he get to the end of the paper trail of African Americans, then he started using DNA to kind of narrow it down where your family is from. And I just think family altogether is very important for his children, his marriages. I think that all of that, together, it just molded him. And I'm just grateful. I was able to go to Africa a few years ago on a mission trip with the Lot Carey Baptist Missionary, the women of Lot Carey Baptist Missionary. And it was just amazing when we went. As soon as we got off, they would say, "Caribou, caribou." And so caribou is welcome. And what they said to us was that anybody that comes from anywhere within the world of African diaspora and come back home to Africa, they say, "Welcome home." And they never knew the directions that we went into when we were our ancestors were taken. And so I think that this welcoming in, and the fact that Henry Louis Gates realized that disconnect, when a lot of us would get to that wall of slavery and couldn't get through, there's a part of us that's still missing from that, and that's that family unity that's very important, And so I just think that, I think that's really, it's almost like the purpose of his whole job is to connect us, with our family, even back in Africa, even if it's just to set foot back on African soil. You feel that, that family or that familiarity, So, and I'm sorry, I went on, but I just think that's very important. I know family is very important from him, from his research and how he helps us get connected. So.
Okay. Well, you got Karibu. When I went to Ghana, I got Akwaba. That's how they say it in the Akan language, one of the main languages spoken in Ghana. So have you ever gone directly to Mr. Gates yourself to have him help you with your genealogical research, or have you considered doing so?
Oh, I would love to. Oh my God. And if you're listening, Dr. Gates, give me a call. So I am, with my family reunion, I am, quote, like the historian. And so I've been up nights, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, finding different people in my family tree. And I think I've probably gotten back as far as anybody in the family has. And so I'm at that wall of slavery now. It's like, okay, I don't know where we came in. I am the Vernon family roots in a place called Little Africa, which is Campobello, Spartanburg, South Carolina. And so I would love to get to that point. There's a couple of celebrities that I know from oral history is in my family, but to connect them, I think I know, but I'm not quite sure, So I would love to, sit at his feet even and let him guide me. I don't mind doing the footwork even, but if I could, just give me a call.
Well, I hope that your title encourages other little scholars, minds, and families to conduct their own research in the footwork to explore the branches of their family tree. And out of all of your titles, a part of Leaders Like Us series, Henry Louis Gates' title perhaps represents the only still living leader. Are there any other living historians that you are researching or considering for future titles of this great series?
Yeah, actually, thank you for asking, because the 11th of August, there will be another release to Leaders Like Us. I call it Leaders Like Us 2.0. And then in January, there will be even 4 more. They've reduced it to 4 titles in each series. And so the series that's coming, well, I wrote the 8 together, and I'm not quite sure how they're gonna bundle them when they come out. I know it's going to be in 4s, but I don't know if I can tell. I might not. I was going to tell. I don't know if I can tell right now, but yes, there are some living people. And what we've started to do is kind of look at different periods, time periods. So we know the 1800s and the 1860s and some of the beyond. There are some people that did some really interesting things, some leaders that we wanted to talk about. Then we looked at the 60s and 70s, and there's some people that we wanted to talk about. And so we have people that are presently living that we want to definitely get their stories about. And so the last 2, the 2.0 and the one that's coming out in January, the Leaders Like Us, we do have, each one has a person that's still living. Yeah, so it's going to be great. I'm excited about these. So it's coming soon. They're actually, I think pre-sales are actually going on now. So you could probably find them. Yeah, the pre-sales are going on. So I'll tell you, one is Jackie Orms. Yeah, Jackie Orms, and then we've got Wendell Scott.
Wendy Scott.
Yeah, and Kathy Hughes and O.W. Gurley. And so it's a lot of, and Georgia Gilmore. So she's one of my favorite. I don't know if are you familiar with her?
Yes.
Okay. So Georgia Gilmore is one, and I like her because she's just an everyday person. You know, I mean, we look at ourselves and go, oh, you know, I could never make a difference. What I do, what can I do? You know, and this is a woman that said, I love to cook. And so she used her skill of cooking to help raise money for the Montgomery bus boycott. And so when we look at ourselves inward, anything that we do and love to do, we can use it for a cause, you know. So,
Yes.
so that's coming up between the first release. The first 4 release will be the 11th of August, and I'm not quite sure on the date for the January release.
That's also exciting, though.
Yeah. So you can say you guys heard it first.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, since 2012, Dr. Gates has been the host of the television series Finding Your Roots on PBS and combines the work of expert researchers in genealogy, history, and genetics, historic research to tell guests about their ancestors' lives and histories. How important is preservation to the African American community?
I mean, I think it's very important. You know, if for no other reason, self-identity, and you know, to know who we are and where we came from. And you know, one of the things I read when I was researching him is that after he started the African American Lives series and stuff, is that it really prompted a lot of African Americans to start doing the research on our roots and where we came from. And so, if for no other reason, it gave that curiosity, and we went out and we started trying to find ourselves. I guess you could say. So it's very, very important. I think he's doing a very important work. I think it was something that we all needed as African Americans or people of African diaspora from all over the world. I'm sure, he's not just, even though he's our Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr., the world is really benefiting from him.
Wow. Well, bringing us to our last and possibly my favorite question, what is one of the greatest takeaways you have experienced exploring Gates' life and his work?
I mean, again, I'm just fascinated. When you watch him on his shows, just how energetic and enthusiastic that he is about our rich history. I don't know if you watch the history of the Black church, but of course, being a preacher's kid, I was like glued. And some of those things I wasn't aware of in terms of what it was or how it was a part of our history, but I lived it. Like the little praise houses and things of that nature. Just like him digging that much to let us know who we are, our contributions to America is just amazing, and I appreciate it so much. I do. I really appreciate him so much.
Oh, wow. Your insight and much of your research is so fruitful and refreshing. We are so appreciative of your insight. This is Leaders Like Us, Henry Louis Gates Jr., a reading with the author, J.P. Miller.
Tracing family roots. Who are you? Your history is more than your name. It's more than the names of your family members who are alive today. It goes further back in time. Who were your ancestors? Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. wanted to help people learn about their ancestors. He wanted to help people understand their family history. In a television studio, Henry Jr. waited behind the scenes. He was about to begin filming his show, African American Lives. He was going to help his first guests discover who their ancestors were. He was a leader in genealogy. He had a lot of information to share. He was about to help many more people than just the ones on his show. A trip to the attic. The house was filled with family. Everyone was there after young Henry Jr.'s grandfather died. Henry Jr. followed his father up the stairs. It was his first time in his grandparents' attic. His father, Henry Sr., opened an old trunk. Inside were newspaper clippings and other Gates family treasures. He searched the stacks of papers until he found the obituary of his great-great-grandmother, Jane Gates. Henry Jr. read the article. It said that his great-great-grandmother was a good parent and that people liked her. It talked about how both Black and white people respected her. It listed all of Jane Gates' children, but it did not say who the father of her children was. The trip to the attic changed Henry Jr. He became curious. He had questions about his paternal family. Henry Jr. set out to solve the mystery. Who was his great-great-grandfather? Henry Jr. made a special trip to the store to buy a spiral notebook. He was going to interview his family. He planned to write what they said in his notebook. His family was happy that he was interested in his family tree. They sat with him and shared funny stories, family celebrations, and pictures. Henry wrote it all down. He learned a lot about his family history. Still, there was something missing. Roots and trees. Family trees can be very important. They can help people understand their roots, how they are related to others. Some people even find out they are related to someone famous. Henry Jr. grew up. He left home for college. Researching family trees still excited him. He knew what he wanted to study, history. He did very well in college. He was asked to teach classes while he was still a student. He earned a doctorate in history. Soon, he was famous for his research. Henry Jr. watched a television show where a man traced his family tree all the way back to Africa. How did he do it? Henry Jr. wondered. He had tried, but he had no luck finding his great-great-grandfather. His family's history was missing information about when relatives were taken due to slavery. Other African-American people wanted to discover their family trees too. He could become a leader and help people find their family history. Solving mysteries. Tracing family trees back to Africa was all Henry Jr. thought about. He spent day and night thinking of ways to do it. Suddenly, he had an idea. He could use DNA. It could be used to trace the family history of famous African-American people all the way back to Africa. He spoke to people at PBS television about his idea for a show. He was already a leader in history. Now he wanted to be a new kind of leader too. PBS turned his idea into a television series called African American Lives. On each episode, Henry Jr. would get information from each famous guest. He found out as much as he could about their family tree using official documents. He used information from the guest's DNA to learn more after that. He could finally tell people who their ancestors were. No other show was like this. He would lead the way once more. Henry Jr. had many famous friends on his show. He had 8 guests the first time he made African American Lives. When he was done, he knew he could help many more people learn about their family history. Famous faces. One of the people that Henry Jr. interviewed was Oprah Winfrey, a famous talk show host. Other guests included comedians and scientists. Henry Jr. never found out who his great-great-grandfather was, but his search led him to change lives. He has won many awards for genealogy research. He has written books and articles. Many people started to research their family history because of him. Henry Jr. gave hope to Black people in Africa and America. He led them to learn their own family stories. And his quote is, "We all have ancestors waiting to tell our family's history. It is my job to find those ancestors on your family tree. Open the door and let them talk." The book is also has a timeline of Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. There's a glossary of terms, text-dependent questions, and an extension activity for young readers. This has been the reading of the biography of Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. in the Leaders Like Us series.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you for joining us for our discussion and reading with author J.P. Miller. You can also purchase this title and others of Leaders Like Us series at www.authorjpmiller2020.com. And join us next time for our story time with the Auburn Avenue Research Library. And again, thank you for joining us.
Thank
Thank
you.